Thanks, Tony. That's the topic, right? Is philosophy dead? I better talk about myself because everybody's doing that. That's my name, obviously. You can find me on Facebook by searching for that name. That's technology for you. And you can find me at a website. It's actually been, I've been running the website for 17 years. I started in 1999. It's at sabbatical this year. I decided to have a year off. Leave all the work for reasonable Hank. I can be found on Twitter at ratbags.com, and you can actually email me and I'll even answer it occasionally. Everybody's been talking about their academic qualifications today. Leaves me a little bit out. I went to graduate management school, but you don't boo, don't hiss, right? But I will bet I'm the only person in this room that's ever been interviewed by Vogue magazine. Seriously, Vogue contacted me and wanted to interview me. Now, I thought they wanted to talk to me about my dress sense, because after all, it's a fashion magazine. For those that need to know, shirt from Lowe's, jeans from Target, shoes from Aldi. They actually wanted me to give it was for a scientific thing. They're doing an article on grounding. You know, this thing where you walk around with bare feet, and you get the negative ions, and it was nonsense. They actually published what I said, which was pretty impressive. So I've been published in Vogue, right? Now, I reckon that beats nature. Anyhow, the theme for this conference is good thinking, and philosophy is all about good thinking. Now, I'd rather be rather distressed, I think, to find that philosophy was really dead and had no more meaning for the world, because that might suggest the world had no further use for good thinking. Now, there have been statements by various smart people talking about the death of or at least the uselessness of philosophy with particular regard to science. Tim Harding talked yesterday about how science grew out of philosophy. And the claim's now been made that it's actually outgrown philosophy completely, and it has no relevance at all. Now, I don't want to single out any single person for this, so I'll just talk about Bill Nye. By the way, I'm unfriending Dave Hawkes. He made some remark about, as soon as I can get onto Facebook, he'll be unfriended. His remark about philosophers. What Bill did, now most of the other people have had it's been a throwaway line. Bill was asked in an interview by a student at the university, is philosophy meaningless? And what he did, instead of just answering it, he created a video and put it up on YouTube. Now, there's an old saying that when you're digging and you're in a hole, you should dig up, not down. What he did was he continued to dig down. He wasn't just wrong, he was fractally wrong. Huh? So, no matter what it was. Now, I'm not going to actually respond to his discussion. That's been done by other people that were smarter than me and knew more about it. But in fact, what he did, he made a whole lot of bizarre statements about philosophy that were actually not true. They were not statements that philosophers actually believe or even say. Now, the problem is he didn't know what he was talking about. Now, like I said, smart man, knows all sorts of stuff. I've actually interviewed Bill Nye, and he seemed a pretty smart guy. When I asked him questions, he answered them. Made sense. His concept of what philosophy is was really naive. Now, he's not alone in this, of course. In any discussion of philosophy with non-philosophers, there will always be an early mention of Descartes, so I think, therefore I am, and an attempt to remember the words of the Philosopher's Song from Monty Python. Just the same way as, for example, if you have any discussion of theology, someone will start rabbiting on about number of angels dancing on the head of a pin, as though that's all theologians have talked about for the last 3,000 years. And of course, if you start talking about psychoanalysis, within seconds someone will start talking about mothers, which is they're not really valid criticisms, and they show that you don't really know what you're talking about. Cliches aren't arguments. Oops, that wasn't supposed to happen. I'm an expert in technology, that's why I just pressed the wrong button on this thing. Right? I want to look at a moment for what philosophy is. That's a diagram, and it was put by someone with obviously too much time on their hands, and they have tried to link philosophy, all the aspects of philosophy, with all the aspects of everything else. The original diagram is 100 megapixels. Yeah, lucky I didn't leave it in the slot. We're still waiting for it to load. What he tried to do was link philosophy with everything else that philosophy can influence. It's an extremely ambitious project, right? It's basically the philosophical equivalent of physicists trying to find the theory of everything. I obviously don't have enough time today, or maybe even the rest of my life, to actually discuss everything to its accuracy, but I'm very impressed with its comprehensiveness. That node there is science, technology and logic. It looks like this. There he is there. And then there's a ring here, which has got various sort of philosophical things. And then it leaves out the edge, and the final rim around it, it seems to name absolutely everything that anybody's ever thought about. It's quite bizarre. So what this is saying is that philosophy affects everything. Now, even if we just take the specifically named philosophy of science, there's a huge variety of opinions from a wide variety of people. Most of them are very smart, but they all have trouble agreeing on what science is. Right? So it's just philosophy of science, and it goes from one extreme to another, madness at both ends, sensible people in the middle. I'm rather pleased to find that I'm in that little group there with Bertrand Russell, Karl Popper and Daniel Dennett, because that's where I'd put myself if I had to put myself on the graph. So even in just one little bit about talking about philosophy and talking about science, the experts can't agree on what it is for where you are. And obviously you could spend a year talking about all this stuff. By the way, the thing about being down here with Russell, Popper and Dennett, confirmation bias is the best bias of all, isn't it, right? Like I said, that's where I fit. I go in there, right? And I really love confirmation bias when it comes from really respected people. I don't really want to defend philosophy today. That's other people's jobs. What I want to talk about is the error that people like Bill Nye have made when criticising philosophy. Now, I don't want to really attack Bill. Right? He's actually a smart person. But what he did, it's an error which we constantly accuse our enemies of doing. Or if we don't want to call them enemies and we want to be polite, our antagonists. Right? What he's doing, it's going into bat without knowing what it is you're debating against or talking about. You've got to be very careful. Now, William Lane Craig was mentioned on the Skeptic camp on Friday. I would never consider debating him because, one, he's a very good debater, and two, he's heard it all before, and even if you read everything he's ever written, and you go in there and you say, that little bit there, he'll have an answer for you. So you've got to be very careful with that. Now, I've heard it said that the worst logical fallacy... I suppose we click that. Here we are. That's an example of how it works. I think the worst I've heard it said that the worst logical fallacy is ad hominem, where you attack the person. It's often incorrectly described as attacking the person. But what it really is attacking the argument because of who the person is, to do anything altogether. Right? It's the difference between saying, you are an idiot for saying that, and you are saying that because you're an idiot. They aren't the same thing. I think, however, that the worst logical fallacy is the use of straw man arguments. That is, you can recover from an ad hominem by apologising. You say to someone, you're an idiot, and the moderator says, excuse me, you can't talk. Oh, sorry, I didn't really mean that. You reword it and basically say it again. Now, see, I'll know half the people in the room are liars. That's offending. Oh, sorry, but mate, half the people in the room are not liars. So you can apologise for that. Okay? But it's very hard to recover if you say something and your opponent simply comes back and says, that isn't what we believe. Now, a lot of the criticism that was levelled at the God delusion by Richard Dawkins was precisely that. Dawkins is a very, very clever biologist and an absolutely hopeless theologian. And what he did, but I have to admit here, a certain amount of green-faced envy at he sold 18 million books or something like that. Even if it was all wrong, he obviously did very well out of it. I've actually seen and it came out about only a few months later, a book by a theologian, professional theologian, who went through all the things that Dawkins said in the book where he got it wrong. And it was all straw man. It was all saying, this is what you believe. Now I'm going to attack it and knock it around. It wasn't what people believe at all. Now, of course, the thing is that some of those, if the theologian had decided to write a book about evolution, Dawkins would have been perfectly entitled to make exactly the same claim backwards. That you're saying things that are outside your area of expertise, and this is why you're wrong. Now, we know that straw men are regularly used by creationists, for example. Anybody's ever debated a creationist, it is an incredible performance. They actually not only make statements about things that you don't believe, but they lie about everything. Most dishonest people I've ever met. I've debated creationists, and they are more dishonest than anti-vaccination liars, and that's really saying something. But straw men are used all the time by people who are believers in pseudoscience, paranormality, and all those sorts of things. It's something they do, but it's not something we should do. The reason that the straw man fails is because the only thing your opponent's really got to say is, that is not our position, and point to evidence to their own body of knowledge or literature. That's what the theologians did to Dawkins. They said, look over here, this is what we're really saying. And they were able to show a whole lot of arguments that he had actually got wrong. Now, I should also point out here, often straw men, or in fact most of the time, it's used from ignorance, not maliciously. It's not deliberate lying, although I have seen it used that way. Particularly with creations and medical quacks. They will actually say almost anything. And how do you respond to this stuff? You've actually got to be ready for it. I've often felt, they know the truth, and they hope that it's too hard to find to actually go out and find the truth. An example of this, by the way, I actually mentioned, you talk about ad hominem. The classic, of course, is the farmer shield gambit. I got a Monsanto hat. Therefore, I'm poisoning the world with Roundup and all those other dreadful chemicals. Right? In fact, if I was to wear this hat into some conferences I've been at, that would be sufficient reason for people to reject everything I said. Just because, hey, you're obviously being paid to wear a hat. No, it isn't. I had to actually pay money to buy the hat. The only thing I've ever received from farmer shield thing, I've got a pen. I don't know where it came from. I assume I stole it when I was at the doctor's. An example of actually, by the way, a lot of these people combine both. The anti-vaccinators do it all the time. They combine the farmer shield ad hominem attack with a straw man. So they say, well, you're only saying that because you're being paid by Big Pharma. I reply, I wish. And, by the way, someone posted on a Usenet forum, I think it was, at one stage, he had absolute proof of the form of payment I was receiving. That is, I was being paid to go to big holiday resorts in the Pacific Islands. And he had absolute proof of this. I actually asked him to produce it, and he couldn't. What I did was a couple of days later, I put up a post saying, I've got to contact Pfizer because there's a scratch on the door of the Ferrari and they need to get me a new one. The amazing thing was, nobody got the joke. They immediately responded by saying, see, you're admitting it now, aren't you? I'll give you an example. One of the things that the anti-vaccination people say all the time is that polio hasn't been eradicated. They'll point to you and say, you say that there is no polio in the world now because it was totally eradicated by vaccination. We actually never said that. What we said is, in fact, it is a disease which could be removed totally. We've been successful so far in deliberately making extinct only two organisms, smallpox and rinderpest. Rinderpest, by the way, is a cattle version of measles, which says that we can wipe out measles from humans as well. We'd love to do this. Wouldn't it be good to be able to say, it's extinct? No, instead we're going to sit there saying, the white rhino is extinct because you've got to get the horns off the thing, which are the same thing, by the way, as hair, so you can sweep it off the floor of barber shops, because you've got to sell it in Chinese medicine shops. But they love it. So the classic was that one. Anyhow, I actually challenged one of these once, and I said, can you give me evidence that polio was renamed and it still exists? And she came back. This, by the way, this is Australia's second leading vaccine researcher. So it wasn't Merrill, it was Bronwyn Hancock. So she came back with two references as to why, we were all saying that polio had been totally removed, which we don't say, and she was proving why we were wrong. And she gave me two references. One was to a thing by the CDC in 1956, I think it was, and what it was, they reclassified paralytic polio, so the word paralytic is quite specific, to a different statistical category. That is, you had to be paralysed for more than 6 months for it to be called, or ticked in the box, paralytic polio. The other paper was beautiful. It was published in a medical journal. It simply repeated all the stuff about the CDC and then said that the incidence of polio infection following the introduction of the vaccine had dropped by more than 99%. That was given to me as evidence that the polio vaccine doesn't work. That she was attacking me on a straw man basis. That is, that she was saying, you say this. I didn't say that at all. But that didn't stop her actually saying this stuff. By the way, she's since repeated it. We had this in public. Actually, it was on the local rag, local newspaper. The back and forth of letters to the editor, till the editor finally said, stop this. Actually, publicly said, we will take no more conversation on this. I was, by the way, living in a place with the second lowest level of vaccination in Australia at the time, so I can understand, yes, where Joe lives. You can probably understand why the paper didn't particularly want to start driving the readers away. But this is the sort of thing that the other side does. It's what they do. It's them. We don't want it to be us. But we do it all the time. All the time. Because we can't be experts in everything, and we always feel the need to jump on something that looks a bit suspicious and say, hey, this is why you're wrong. If you're going to do it, you need to make sure that you know what you're doing. Now, I want to give one example. And this is something I saw recently, where normally sensible people mocked something for being wrong without knowing what the experts in the field actually say. It has to do with astrology. Now, before I go any further, astrology is a load of nonsense, absolutely meaningless, and can't predict anything. Right? The mocking was on the basis that the pattern of stars in the sky has changed over the last 2,000 or 3,000 years. And so everybody's dates for star signs has changed. That's actually correct, right? Precession and all that stuff, the stars aren't where they were 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. The straw man part comes in because the position of constellations in the sky has nothing to do with an astrological chart. An astrological chart divides the circle into 12 equal parts and they're anchored on the solstices and the equinoxes. That's when my birthday is. I was actually born on the equinox on the cusp of Libra and Virgo. I have told believers in astrology that because of that date, I was predestined to be sceptical. They have said to me, is that true? And I always say, it is, go and look it up. Now, so officially I'm a Virgo. Right? Now, people have now told me that, and because Virgo starts on the 21st or 22nd of December, depending on when the actual equinox is. I've now been told that Virgo starts on the 17th of September, goes to the 31st of October. Does that mean that that equinox has been moved a bit further? No, it doesn't. Huh? One of the reasons for the invention of astrology was it was necessary to know the correct times of the year for things like planting, harvesting, breeding your animals and so forth. It's relatively easy to determine solstices and equinoxes. So they were used to divide the year up. In fact, the sun still shines through that same hole in Stonehenge on the summer solstice, or we would call the winter solstice. Oh, stop it. That thing up there shows that nothing has changed in terms of where the sun comes up in the goodness knows how long it is since Stonehenge was built. This was a classic straw man. If you go to an astrologer and you say, oh, look, that's wrong, that's moved up to there, they say, no, it hasn't. They say, you don't know what we mean by an astrological chart. They are just names for things. Right? The origins don't really matter anymore. Now, much as it doesn't matter, that my birthday there, according to the name of the month, is in the 7th month of the year. That's September. We're now in the 9th month of the year, aren't we? Because it's called November. They're names for things. Now, quibbling about the names of things allows the people on the other side to say, you're wrong. And then you've lost. Looking around the room, I see a lot of people who look like they might be of an age to have had children or might have children at the moment. I want you to think of the most annoying thing that young children do. The most annoying thing that young children do. I don't mean teenagers, because everything they do is annoying. Right? It's in the job description. I don't mean children, youngsters in their 20s and 30s, because the most annoying thing they do is not leave home. I mean very young children. They universally have a very annoying habit, and that is that they ask questions all the time. Huh? They're always asking you questions. Now, some of these questions are easily answered. Some of them, you might know the answer, but it's very difficult to explain to young kids. So you might know why the sky is blue, but try and explain that to a young child in terms of the diffraction and the mixture of light and the spectrum from the sun. They're going to look at you and say, what? Some of the answers might not be appropriate for young children. They can ask questions and you think, well, really, that's not something they need to know at this age. But no, you can handle it. Sometimes you don't know the answer, but you can use it as a learning experience to go away and find out the answer, and that can help the child. You can say, oh, let's go and find out. Let's go on the internet and filter out the nonsense from Google. Let's go to the library and read a book. Children raise questions, and their questions are always interesting. But no one ever criticises children for not knowing the answers or not being able to find the answers for themselves. So one of the criticisms of philosophy has been that it asks questions but doesn't provide any answers. But then providing the answers is the job of science. It isn't philosophy's job to provide all the answers. It's to create a framework in which we go looking for answers and asking questions. So philosophy can provide answers to questions based on logic or maybe even semantics. But science is there to take the questions about the universe to seek out the answers. I don't think I'd want to live in a time when asking questions without providing answers was seen to be a bad thing. I'm going to finish off with a quote from someone famous. And this sums up what I really think about the whole matter of asking questions. And it's about good thinking in general. Before I finally finish, there's the words of the philosopher's song. And no, there's not enough time this weekend to get me drunk enough to sing it to you. Thank you.